Hello, all you hardcore boxing fans out there. How you doing? It's Porky here, the voice of hardcore boxing. But you know that, don't you? Because that's why you've tuned in. Today, I'm joined by my good friend and co-founder of the channel, Rico from London. How you doing, Rico?
Yeah, good, mate. I'm not having any nightmares, so I can't complain, can I?
A lot's gone off since we've last had a chat. You're still in lockdown now, then, aren't you? More or less.
Isn't everyone?
Yeah, it's not good, is it? I've jotted just 10 things down for us to have a chat about. It's come to my attention that Rob Tebbett's had Campbell Hatton on his channel, who was 1-0, and driving about up and down country or on train, wherever they do. When was the last time Rob Tebbett had somebody on his channel that were 1-0 and went out of his way to other end of the country in the middle of a pandemic to interview them?
Look, it's the same way how Sky push Campbell Hatton, right? They don't push any other 1-0 guy. If his surname wasn't Hatton, he wouldn't be on any channels. He wouldn't be on any shows. Nobody would know his name. So, well, all these channels, whether that's Boxing Social, Seconds Out, whether that's IFL or so on, the only thing they really care about is views. And with somebody like Campbell Hatton, I guess if you get people to buy into him early and you don't like his character and he's got interesting things to say, then he'll be good for them for years. And I often find with these channels as well, all of these boxers have their favorites. So you have to get in early to become the favorites and give them backing, because if they become someone, then you end up sort of growing with them. I mean, it didn't work out for IFL with AJ because AJ is never on IFL anymore. But at one stage, Joshua was all the time on IFL, and that was the way how you could get, access to Joshua. So I think all of these guys are sort of putting punts out and hoping that these guys grow, and then in return, their views for their channels grow and they make more money.
Well, I heard that the Skins, or the ponytail guys. It was with Josh,
AKA Skins.
AKA Skins. He didn't like the fact that when Coogan were going up there, they were reporting back to Eddie Earn and things like that. So I think that's why Joshua decided to do his own thing. He didn't want any rotten apples in the camp because he's pretty regimented, Joshua, isn't he?
Yeah, and also it's like he's big enough. He doesn't need to be on IFL. If he has his own YouTube channel, I'm sure if he puts something on that, I'm sure that will get equally and more views, and then he takes the money. So these boxers come to a stage where they end up outgrowing these platforms. I think Tyson Fury hasn't done that, but then he has Top Ranks Machine that does their own stuff. He's always on telly talking about some nonsense. He'll be doing stuff on his Instagram. So I think all of these guys, when they get to a certain stage, figure a way to, make money for themselves rather than make money for IFL.
Fury's not in a fight for 450 days, and he's in news every day.
I know, as is his wife. So,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. All right then. Conor Benn is the hype now out of control.
I think it's, I'll echo what Terry said on this, that he's the matchroom creation of a fighter. You can't really fault him for his last performance. It was exciting. He did what he had to do. He blasted that guy out. They're building him into a star. And, when we look at somebody like Jake Paul this weekend, all you see is this sort of the YouTube world and the entertainment world becoming closer and closer with British boxing, and he's the guy in the middle, and he also has that Nigel Benn thing going for him. I personally actually like watching him fight, so I'm not going to say that. Not going to say he's the second coming or anything, but I think he's quite an entertaining fighter. He's massively improved. Um, does he warrant the hype he gets? No. Is he the best welterweight in Britain? Probably not. But I'd rather watch him than Josh Kelly. And I actually think one of the things that he's benefited from massively is having two, relatively big performances. Or he's been headlining two shows in a close period of time, where a lot of boxers haven't been able to do so. They can't get any momentum.
Yeah. What What level would you say Conor Benn's at? Because me, I'd say he's English stroke British, but what level would you say he is?
I'd say he's British level. I'd say he's British level. I mean, he's at the same level of Michael McKinson, Congo, Josh Kelly. The gulf in welterweight between the British guys and the guys abroad, which are, the guys in the US in particular, is like levels beyond. So even if you get to British European level, the jump from there to the fringe world guys like Jerome Ennis, then Sean Porter's, Danny Garcia's, and then there's a big jump from there to your Spence and Terence Crawford. So what you end up actually having is like you've got 4 or 5 different levels in the welterweight division because it's so deep.
Yeah. Do you see Conor Benn winning a world title? Yes or no, Rico?
Probably not. No, I mean that division's just so deep, and it's not because of. I think in another division, matched correctly, he probably could do it, right? But
Regular belt.
Yeah, but in welterweight division, if you look at the British fighters that won it, we had Kell Brook, we had Amir Khan, and those were 2 exceptional fighters. I don't think any of the current crop of British fighters, if anybody's going to win it, it's going to be Conor Benn because he's going to be matched properly. But I just don't see any of these guys being even close to the level of Jerome Ennis, Virgil Ortiz. These guys are on a different planet just for amateur pedigree and everything else.
What did you think to Conor Benn's after fight interview at Side at Ring or whatever they call it, bubble thing?
If I said that his pay-per-view, you'd jump across the screen and jump on me, but it comes back to this whole thing about hype, right? It's not boxing anymore, it's entertainment. That's the thing that Matchroom are selling, and they're selling these names, and the casuals watching boxing, they might think he's pay-per-view now and they might pay for it. Does it mean that we'll pay for it? The people who are watching the channel know. But the same, we've been, boxing fans have been paying for Dillian Whyte, the cam man, fighting against all these average opponents. So it wouldn't put past me that Conor Benn had a pay-per-view fight against Josh Kelly, say, in a year's time, and that would sell well because the pay-per-view market's not catered for people like us.
Yeah. All right, then. The White Rhino. He's back. He's back after 86 days. What do you think to Matchroom passing up on the chance to work with David Allen again?
I think anybody working with David Allen, in this case, it's Dennis Hobson. You need to think about fighter safety, right? And he's a guy that slurs his speech. He's a guy that has said that he's had headaches after fights and blurred vision. I wonder whether the board are going to give him a license again. They probably will, because the board just don't care about fighter safety at all. No. I don't think, what? It's one of those things that I wouldn't be the guy that would put him on my show, because I wouldn't want blood on my hands, or his well-being on my hands. But somebody's going to do it, right? Somebody would have done it, and in this case, it's Dennis. I'd rather never see him box again.
Do you feel that Dennis is taking advantage of him?
No, I think it's mutual, right? It's Dave needs to be on a show. Dave wants to box again. Dennis sees somebody that can attract star power onto his shows. So, it's boxing, right? People don't think about if anything, the board should step in and they should do the brain scans and everything else, and they should stop the guy from boxing.
Or do you feel that Dennis wants to get his 30 grand back that he had invested in, before he threw him out at gym 7 years ago?
You're not gonna get it from Dave anymore. I mean, who's he gonna? If Matchroom don't work for him, which heavyweights is he gonna face? Cash Ali?
Well, Queensbury don't want to work with him, do they? So I mean,
well, he messed Queensbury around with that whole Dubois thing. So
yeah, so he's messed a lot of people about Dave. Do you think he's burnt too many bridges?
Yeah, but doesn't everybody in boxing?
Yeah. Do you feel that he'll fight Cash Ali and Dennis will try and keep it in-house?
I wouldn't be surprised if that was it. I don't think, if I was Dennis, I think that's a smart move.
Yeah, build it up.
Give Cash another fight, let him beat Dave Allen. That lifts up his name value. This is the guy that beat Lucas Brown and Nick Webb and stuff. And I think that will be good for Cash. If Cash can catch Dave, I think that will be perfect. And I think Cash will be the favourite in that fight.
Yeah, because he's more active and he's a lot fitter, isn't he?
He takes boxing seriously.
Yeah. Well, he will with Richard training him, won't
Yeah, true.
Do you feel that Dennis's app that he's doing with Fight Zone, do you think that that'll come off, or do you think it's just a flash in the pan press release thing? You know, because he's famous for them, Dennis, isn't he?
I think it's challenging to make any money from boxing. So look at Frank Warren with Box Nation.
Yeah.
On the face of it, I mean, I subscribe to Box Nation, but after watching Cotto against Margarito every day of the week, that being on reruns, I had enough. But I think the whole Box Nation thing showed that boxing is such a small and niche market.
Yeah.
And when you remove, how many people actually willing to pay for boxing in this country? Like, we've got Boxing News. What other boxing magazines do we have? We've got, people just don't pay for boxing in this country. Why would he? A lot of it's just trash.
Do you think I was harsh in my prostitute video yesterday, Rico?
You know what? As he said in that, you say what you say, and I think in your case, as long as you don't have favourites, that's fine, and that's why people respect you.
Yeah, but I can't rinse everybody else and let them get away with that, can I?
Well, exactly.
My inbox, which
and it's your opinion, right? It's your opinion.
Yeah, we wish him well, though, don't we?
Yeah, 100%.
DAZN and Sky. The rumor around the campfire is that Sky didn't even offer Eddie a deal. They just wanted him to run contracts out and him to go. Do you feel that Bean knew this a year ago when he went begging for that job on darts commentary? Because he did a refresher course, didn't he, about darts commentary? Do you think Bean saw this a year ago?
I think when the pandemic hit, the big picture is right. The football clubs, they had to give money back to Sky, but Sky, with no sports, lost a lot of subscribers. And they probably haven't got those people back because people aren't as interested in football as they were before. Yeah. So a lot of the sports I call are sort of like ancillary sports. So you have F1, you have football, and those are probably the two main sports on Sky that actually drive subscribers. Then around that, you have like the people that watch football, like the darts, they like the snooker, they like a bit of the golf, they'll watch some of the boxing. So all of the other stuff around Sky is not core to sport, it's not core sports, right? And the problem with boxing is boxing's quite an expensive sport to get into, and occasionally you hit the jackpot when you have these big pay-per-views like Joshua against Klitschko. And what Sky have realized with the best guys fighting in other places, so you have Joshua fighting in Saudi, you have Joshua fighting in New York, you have these Dillian Whyte pay-per-views, you have Campbell against Lomachenko, that boxing probably hasn't been making its money back. And if something's not making their money back or driving subscribers, what's the point of keeping them? And the only way that you can get back into boxing is by Sky investing heavily and Eddie signing better fighters. But they're probably looking at the next crop of fighters and figure out that these guys are not stars and they won't drive the same numbers that Joshua did.
If you take Joshua out of the equation, it's pretty threadbare, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you take Joshua out of the equation, it's basically like Queensbury, but better, but not much better.
Do you feel that Anthony Sims Jr., David Allen, and Sam Eggington got a raw deal from Eddie? And do you think Ted Cheeseman's heading that way as well?
You know what? Boxing's a cruel sport, right? If you're winning, you're the promoter's favourite. So Eddie needs to look after his business. I think where the problem comes is that Eddie claims that he's these guys' mates and he has their best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Whereas he's actually a businessman, and none of these guys. Like Anthony Sims Jr. used to be Don King fighter, wasn't he? He left. He got his contract. He was on every channel talking about how he's this underrated guy. He lost against a pretty average opponent. After that, he's disappeared. So, what's the point of investing in this guy? There's a dime a dozen of these in the US. Yeah, these other guy, Otha Jones, the young guy, beat us again last weekend. So,
Yeah. All right. Dillian Whyte. What next for Dillian Whyte? You think he's become like the ugly sister at the ball?
well, he's the most avoided fighter in boxing history. So,
What, Dillian Whyte?
yeah, the cam man. Anybody can get it, but he doesn't fight anyone. You know what? I think they just gonna milk it out, and they just gonna hope that he gets a title shot at some point, and he's gonna keep fighting these pay-per-views. If Parker wins, he might have a rematch with Parker on pay-per-view. As long as people keep spending money on his pay-per-views, there's no incentive to put him in a proper fight.
Do you think that average of 200,000 that he pulls in for these 6 pay-per-views, you think going into his 7th pay-per-view, you think that Sky are just happy to get that? He's the 200,000 man. Just get that 4 million in off at pay-per-view. Do you think that's how it's going in?
Yeah, I think, but you know what? When Matchroom moves to the zone, inevitably, I don't know whether it's going to be announced this next week, the week after, whenever. That just changes the model because you wouldn't have pay-per-views then, right?
Yeah.
So the only way that you get people to subscribe to the zone long term is by having a good boxing schedule of regular fights. And also that's where you need the fights that people are actually going to be entertained by. And I think the milking of these pay-per-view fights, like I wouldn't have had any issue with Dillian Whyte if these fights weren't always on pay-per-view. I would have loved to see him fight for a world title at some point, but would have known what would have happened. But when they do go to the zone, then ideally, there's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel because then we're not going to be milked by these pay-per-views constantly, and the zone are going to be pushing for better product globally so that they can get subscribers across all different markets. So hopefully these guys will have better fights.
Do you feel that boxing's in dire straits with Dillian Whyte going for his 7th pay-per-view, not fought for a European yet, and now this Triller card at the weekend that we're on? This.
I think those are separate issues. So, firstly, like if you think about boxing being in dire straits because of these pay-per-views, it's the fans that are buying these pay-per-views. If nobody buys pay-per-views, there's no pay-per-views. So you can't blame boxing promoters and TV networks for putting these pay-per-views on if people are silly enough to buy them, right?
Yeah.
And on the Triller stuff, I saw a lot of people on Twitter getting really upset about it, but again, I don't even classify that as boxing. For me, it's not boxing. It's just entertainment where a few people have gloves on and celebrities fight against each other. The hardcore boxing audience isn't focused on that. But if you had better fights, if you had your Joshua Furies years ago, if you had your Wilder Joshuas, if you had your Terence Crawford against Errol Spence, if you had all these big fights happening in boxing, people wouldn't care about that. But the problem comes when people are more interested in that stuff because that's actually more entertaining than most of these cards that we see.
Yeah.
So you can't blame Triller for making money because no one's interested in the sport. But if boxing promoters and TV networks are putting poor cards and poor events on, then why should people be interested?
Yeah. Oscar De La Hoya, you think he's lost the plot?
I think I think he hasn't lost it. It's been that way for a while, but people have. But now he's actually on telly doing this stuff. But yeah, it's a bit sad to see.
Doing the business.
Doing the business, yeah.
In the toilets, though, not on TV.
I don't think he even did it in toilets, to be honest. He probably did right off the table there. But I can imagine that in between when they're not cutting their Oscars, cutting lines. But yeah, I think that the reality is that Oscar's been that way for a long time. Everybody's known this. This is why Canelo left. This is why he was removed from Golden Boy a couple of years ago, and he was on this leave of absence thing. But people, because he's a boxing star, people allow it to carry on, and people put him on different shows, and it's entertaining, and you know, the people that aren't boxing fans probably look at it, isn't that funny? But for me, it's just sad watching a legend like that. And I saw Ken talking about a video about him having a picture of Oscar, which is just chucked in a bin.
The Irish kid.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's a good kid, Kent, isn't he?
yeah, he knows
Yeah,
his stuff.
yeah. I mean, I'm the last person to talk about drugs, aren't I? But I know what he's going through, and like I said in the video this afternoon, I can tell when somebody's had it better than anybody, can't I? He was lit up like a Christmas tree at weekend, wasn't he, Oscar?
Yeah, look, the thing is, right? If it was behaving in the same way, he'd be sacked, right? He would never be on telly again. You know, the people around him, Al Bernstein, um, all the other people around him, they're not telling him off because you'd be dragging this guy off the air straight away. If that was your TV broadcast and he turned up like that, you'd be dragging him off the air, right? But
Nobody did
all
anything,
of these
did they?
people, like, they're encouraging him, aren't they?
You feel that knocking about Snoop Doggy Dogg the Dog Father and all the rest of them, do you think that that's probably dragging him down to their level when he's not taking it
Yeah, but you
seriously?
know what? Snoop has his puff, but you know, Snoop, right? He's a rapper, right? He's not there to claim that he's the greatest athlete ever. He's a character in his own right, and it's a different thing, right?
Yeah.
Oscars are representing the sport and he's representing Golden Boy. What do you think Virgil Ortiz, his star 147 fighter, thinks when he sees the guy that's meant to be navigating his career behaving that way?
Probably his management team probably think, let's just get away from him, won't they?
And Ryan Garcia, right?
Oh yeah, Eddie's about him,
All
isn't
of
he?
these guys. What do you think this owner thinking?
Well, Eddie's sniffing around Garcia, isn't he? Like he were Canelo.
Yeah, of course he is. But I don't blame him because everybody does that in boxing, right?
Yeah. Okay then. Tyson Fury against Big Dos Femi. We're we've had announcements and tweets about deadlines, and I think we're on about fifth or sixth deadline now, and it just keeps going on and on and on. Do you feel that they just need to keep the lie going, or what do you think?
You know what? This is what happens when there's not big fights. There's so many boxing news outlets that are just creating stories out of nothing. Back in the day, when we'd read our boxing on newspapers or boxing news, you wouldn't be interviewing these promoters, and the promoters have become stars. You put a camera in front of Eddie, he'll just chat, and people get excited, and Michael Benson will tweet you, and then the matchroom bots will just say this is a fact. The
Yeah,
fact that they've been negotiating for how many months now? 6, 7?
10.5 months since they signed the deal.
Yeah, and yet no, they don't have a venue, they don't have broadcasters, they don't have anything. That just says to me that the deal's quite far away from being done. And also, do you see Tyson Fury was his inactivity stepping in the ring,
No.
to the biggest fight of his career? And also the chat about McCracken not being in the corner for Joshua. Do you think Joshua would agree to that? Let's be realistic.
Well, look, why are they waiting on McCracken to go to Olympics? He's not even going to be in corner at the Olympics. So what is all that about?
Well, he will be at the Olympics. I'm pretty sure about that.
Yeah, he's not going to be working corner though, is he?
No. But look, he's the Olympic. He wears two hats. But it's not like this Olympic day came as a surprise to anybody, did it? It's not like this week. It's not like this week they figured that, oh yeah, the Olympics might take place. Like, you work around that. That's one of the things you put in a contract. We can't do these dates. We're looking for venues for these dates. We can't do these dates because of the Olympics. Joshua needs 2-3 weeks with McCracken before then. It's not rocket science, is it?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
When fighters have weddings and they don't agree to do a fight, right?
Yeah.
That happens all the time, right? Fighters say, I've got a wedding, or, my child's been born, so I can't do this date. And they work around that and they find another date. Nobody's forcing them to do this at a certain date. They can just go to these different venues and countries and ask for the money. It's not a case that they have to do it on these dates.
Okay. Josh Wale's contract ends in about 6 hours with Dennis. 2-year deal.
Is that stopwatch behind you just going the...
Yeah. There's been no communication. apart from something in June regarding a date in October for a WBF featherweight title on a yacht in Gibraltar. They started the camp, nothing from Dennis or anything. Do you think they're in the right is to feel a little bit aggrieved after going 4-0 and winning a belt?
They are, but you know what? Given it's boxing again, nothing really surprises you. I think with Josh Wale, wherever he goes next, best of luck to him and his dad.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of big fights to be made. And maybe if they're not with Dennis, maybe they get a matchroom show to fight on the other side against Jordan Gill or whoever that might be.
Well, Jordan Gill fight were offered by Matchroom, and they wanted 10 rounds. Caldwell and Jordan, and Mick and Josh wanted 12. So they couldn't come to an agreement. So.
Well, I think Josh has a lot of good fights to be made. You've got Ryan Walsh, you've got Lee Wood now. There's a lot of good fights to be made still. So sometimes not being tied to a promoter manager and being self-managed or whatever they do next might help that case.
Okay. Billy Joe Saunders, has he got grief regarding the agreed purse with empty stadium, and now it looks like they're going to sell it out, but they're not budging on his purse? Has he got a bit of beef with that? And also the fact that there's no English judge when they said they were going to be. Do you think that he's been treated like the B-side?
Well, he is the B-side, but also he has.
Don't use Eddie.
Yeah, but he also has. Look, he also has MTK, who are the best managers in the world, as everybody at MTK keeps telling us. Yeah. Aren't these the basic things that you put in contracts, right? So when you agree the contract, you put the judges. Maybe you put one of the stipulations that if the venues has this many people attending, then the purse goes up this much. It's too late once you sign the contract. You can't moan. You either pull out of the fight or you take the fight. But it's not. The stuff shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody involved, and also that should all be in the contract.
Would you put it past Billy pulling out with a week to go?
I think there'd be penalty clauses if he did that. And I also think maybe they'll do it under the cover of an injury. But again, what's the point? He needs a career-defining fight. Why would he do that?
It's getting on for 6 years since he won World Middleweight Championship against Andy Lee.
Great performance.
Yeah, and apart from the Lemieux fight, he's sort of like been up and down, hasn't he, Bill? It's a shame, isn't it?
He's a shame. He's a great talent, and you know what? This Canelo fight, it might be mind games also. They might be. If you plant in the seed that the judges are corrupt, you plant in the seed that this and this is against you. Sometimes some fighters need that sort of thing where they want to make it like the world's against them, that they can get the best out of themselves. And also, it might just be gamesmanship to ensure that they have a good outcome if the fight goes on point, because I can't see Bull knocking out Canelo. But if they believe that he can outbox Canelo, they want to make sure that the judging point has been raised vocally before that you can clamour for a rematch, or you get fair judging.
Yeah. All right, then. Shannon Courtenay has been strutting about Watford with a belt after beating the number 9 ranked girl for a vacant belt. Do you feel that it's not really her fault that she's ended up a world champion and, under difficult circumstances? You think people have been harsh on her?
Yeah, look, it's not her fault that she won that title, but I also look at it as a paper belt because it should have never been a world title fight. But I thought it was a really, really entertaining fight. Both of the women put on a good performance, so I can't knock that. But this is where it comes, where you have a big promoter and you have a big time manager like Adam Booth. This is where it helps you, that you can get these shots that some of the other fighters can't get. For me, the fact. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. You were saying well.
No, I just said, for me, the fact that she, fought a close points decision win over Ebony Bridges shows that if she's going to be put against someone that's a more difficult opponent, maybe that is a Rachel Ball, maybe that's somebody else or abroad, that's when the trouble starts. But she can't really hide as a world title world title holder anymore.
Did you know out of all the belts, the world title belts, there's never ever been a vacant fight between number 8 and number 9 for any belt. So it's a bit of a record breaker, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, tells you all you need to know, right? But this is where this undermines female boxing in the sense that that's allowed to happen. I mean, you look on the other side, you've got Katie Taylor against Natasha Jonas, brilliant fight, two very accomplished amateurs, good fighters, big names. On the other side, you've got somebody that nobody had ever seen fighting, coming over from Australia, the social media celebrity, Shannon Courtenay coming off, she had a fight in between, but lost to Rachel Ball fighting for a world title. So you think that is ridiculous, but that's boxing for you.
What do you think to Daniel Dubois getting a shot at the WBA?
Yeah, but it's it's a trinket belt.
Yeah, I know, but it puts him in position for mandatory, doesn't it? Coming off a loss, do you think that's fair?
Probably not. But look, Char was isn't Char like a regular champ or something?
I'm lost count with WBA.
Then you have like Trevor Bryant's as well holding something.
And Joe Joyce got the gold belt.
Yep. So it's all just sanctioning fees, isn't it?
Do you feel that the media and Dan Raphael and a selected few are in the rights to say that the WBC is the most disgusting organisation out of all across the board worldwide?
You mean WBA or WBC?
WBA, I said.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it has been for a long time. It's not new to people like you and I and many of the people on this channel.
Yeah.
The only thing they do is they just want to get sanctioning fees and they want to get people to pay high fees to defend gold belts and interim belts and regular belts. And I think he undermines the boxer, right? But I think, I think it was Terry that said about Conor Benn or whoever it was, the example that maybe you can fool some sponsors to, give you more money based on that.
Okay. Do you feel that Eddie doing a pay-per-view every month now until his contract goes out, do you think that's a bit rich considering he was saying that the 6 football chairmen yesterday on TalkSport or the day before are all greedy and they're abusing fans? Do you feel that that's a bit rich from Eddie?
Well, it is, but it's also rich from Sky doing all of this stuff because Sky were trying to charge us a pay-per-view for football a few months ago, weren't they?
Yeah.
It's not like football's been for the fans, but back to boxing, I mean, we just been shown pay-per-views left, right, and centre. So, all of these people are all in it for themselves, and I feel sorry for the young kids today because you can't watch any sports unless you're paying these mad subscription fees for everything and pay-per-views and stuff. It's like, how can people afford to be? It's no surprise that people don't get interested in any sports and they just do esports because nobody can afford to watch any sport these days.
Yeah. Liam Williams got beat at weekend. Did you think that his performance were one-dimensional against Andrade?
Yep, and I said before the fight, I tweeted and I made this point that he hasn't beat anybody since losing to Beefy Smith that we should think that he's world level. And I don't think Andrade looked great, but Liam Williams just didn't have the answers. And I think he's a courageous fighter. He fought well. I think he's one of those pressure fighters that against weak opposition, he'll just break their wall down and he'll end up catching them. But at world level, he's quite a way shy from that. And even Beefy Smith showed us that.
Do you feel that Liam Williams getting beat and Robbie Davies Jr., that were a bit of a farce when he got beat, when there were confusion about whether he should switch and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And then throw in Willie Hutchinson, stripping him down to 168. Do you think that Dominic Ingle's been found out?
I mean, I don't think there's much to find out when I don't think he's ever really proved anything spectacular himself. he's done a decent job with Kid Galahad, but Kid Galahad's a naturally talented fighter. He did a decent job with Kell Brook at one stage, but Kell Brook's a naturally talented guy. But who has he taken that doesn't have the high amateur pedigree to a very high level? You know, Liam Williams would have been. If you take him to a world title by beating Andrade, then you could say, wow, that's, you know, pretty amazing.
You think that Dominic's sort of inserted himself into the position because of his father's second name and that he's been sussed?
Yeah, look, I mean, Shane McGuigan's the same, right? If his name wasn't McGuigan, he wouldn't get the fighters he would have got. You know, Josh Taylor and these guys, and that's just the way how boxing works. I just haven't seen many of the fighters he's sort of inherited from other stables. I just haven't seen them improve massively.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a bad trainer, but I don't think he deserves the recognition of being one of Britain's best trainers.
Yeah.
What did he do with Billy Joe Saunders?
You know, for a couple of fights, didn't he?
Yeah, but what did he? Yeah, but what did we see?
Did he have him for the Lemieux fight? Or was that Ben Davison? I can't remember.
No, that was. You're right. That is actually Ingle, but Lemieux's not a good fighter. I mean, Lemieux's a bit of a plodder, right? He's got power, but he's never been thought about technically a good fighter. Like, has Lemieux ever even won a bout?
I don't know, didn't they? I heard that there were Billy left, didn't he? Or look, after that drug charge thing or whatever he got, and it all went a bit tits up for Dominic with Billy after that. But didn't he stay on for just one fight? Was that the Monroe fight?
Yeah.
And he worked for Note or something in that fight or something. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true, so don't quote me on that, although it's on camera now. But so is that people saying that Billy were accusing him of giving him something? I don't know. No.
So he had the nasal spray thing as well, didn't he?
Do you think Billy's going to let somebody stick nasal spray up his nose?
Exactly.
It's just nasal spray happens to be in something that's in his system, and it's what they're using. I never really bought that. I'm a firm believer, right? The rumour's true that he'd been given something and he didn't know what it were, but it's allegedly, and that's what I believe. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But they need to come out and clarify it, don't they? And
yeah, look, if you're an athlete, you get a list of stuff that you can take and you can't take, and you know what you're buying off the counter. Even if somebody sticks something to you, that's your own fault, right?
Yeah, but if
you go to a party and somebody gives you a drink and they say, "Here's a pill, take this. There's a headache tablet." Are you going to take it? Probably not.
Well, I mean, Tony Bellew more or less insinuating that it was Dominic Ingle because they had a bit of Twitter beef, didn't they? They
did.
It. So I don't know. Maybe Dominic's giving him something and he's tried to give him an advantage, and it's my mistake, and they got caught. I don't know. We're never going to get to, but you don't get to the bottom on it with liars, right?
No, but it's the same Bellew that said that Dillian Whyte would never take anything because he knows the guy. So.
But I'm a firm believer that Billy Joe Saunders isn't a drug cheat, but he's been convicted of it, and it'll always follow him around. It's served a ban, won't it?
Well, that's it.
So, but we wish him well in his fight against the sport's biggest star.
No, of course, you know. Hope that he wins. You know, I'm not his biggest fan outside ring, but you know, I'd rather see a British guy win rather than Canelo. And you know, he's got a good trainer in his corner, and you know, you hope he wins from Mark, right?
Yeah. Okie dokie then. Well, listen, thanks for coming on, Rico.
One question for you.
Right.
So, an American boxing journalist tweeted, I think it was yesterday, what is it with the British media that they back in their own guy? And we had, what's it called? Ron Lewis getting antsy about this whole thing. And then he started listing that all the British media backed Liam Williams. They all backed Carl Frampton. They all backed, who else was it recently? I lost the breath. But do you think the British boxing media sort of like, even if they don't believe it, they always back in the breath because they're always worried that if they go against the promoter might not like them or the fighter might not like them? Do you think that's often the case?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think they want to get out there again and get a free plane ticket, free hotel, and pick up some money for going out there. And I think it's all down to that and big jolly up jobs for boys. I think nobody dares say anything anymore. I think it'd be better if they did it like they used to do before, where they have them back in the studio in UK and we get a better opinion from them, like they used to do back in the day, instead of them flying out there. I mean, now we've got Gareth A. Davis running around like an excited child at these shows abroad and just behaving like he thinks it's a club 18 to 30 and talking about boxing styles and switch hitting and this and that like he's Manny Stewart. And I think it's just out of control now. There's people who are not boxers doing commentary work. Now, I think that to be a pundit, at least a ringside pundit expert analysis, you've got to have been a champion boxer at world level, because the public have to buy into you, don't they? Nowadays, we've got everybody and the dad giving an opinion at Silent Ring. And we all saw what happened with Tony Bellew and Dave Caldwell, where they were jumping up and down and cheerleading for Chisora, weren't we? I mean, that, for me, just about summed up British boxing.
Yeah, I agree. It was a low point. It was a low point. And then they scored it to Chisora as well, adamantly after the fight. And they were sitting ringside and they scored it to Chisora.
Yeah. So I just think it's in dire straits. And I still believe that Eddie's going to chance his arm with DAZN and get as much in as he can and ride Joshua out till the end and then go. That's what I think. And I think all these people that have reached that have put all their eggs in one basket with Eddie Hearn, they're all going to be very vulnerable when he's gone. And we know them people are. We don't need to mention them.
Hi, Johnny.
Hi, Johnny Nelson. Dave Caldwell. Steffi Bull. Tony Sims. All them people that anti-Frank Warren, Tony Bellew. I think that Frank will be here to stay because he's boxing, isn't he? They're not. They're just money, aren't they?
Yeah, you know what? I'll tell you what's good lesson to everybody. If you go to Square Mile Boxing Innovators podcast, Martin Theobald interviews Frank Warren. He does this podcast series where he interviews boxing innovators, and Frank's talking in that about all the stuff with the board when he funded the brain scans and everything else. And actually, Frank's actually really, he's actually a lot nicer in that than you think, and he's quite excited. And they don't talk about any of the modern boxing stuff. They talk about all the stuff that changed, you know, him coming from the unlicensed scene and stuff. It's a bit of a trip down memory lane, and it's worth checking out. So Square Mile Boxing and it's Boxing Innovators. It's an interview with Frank Warren, so it's worth checking out.
Did he put on Lenny McLean against Man Mountain York, Frank Warren?
Yeah, I think he did. He talks about
it. Does he? I haven't seen that. Send me it to me WhatsApp, Rico.
I'll send it to you, mate.
I've heard a couple of tales. Mickey Fields told me a couple of tales about Lenny, and I'm sure that because didn't he stick nut on Lenny before Belloc started or something, and then Lenny just steamed him. But I think I've got a photograph somewhere on my phone of they used to call him Young Frankie Warren, didn't they, back in the day?
You know, there's actually you can see that on YouTube. There's a video.
Yeah.
That
Frank were corner man with one of them, one of him and some other guy, some scrap metal guy or something.
Yeah.
And some women that they had doing ring car girls were like proper scrubbers and that. Do you know what I mean? Everybody cheering and, you know, like something you get on a Sunday dinner in a working men's club, you know, 40 years ago or something.
Not like the ones you have in Dennis's show.
No, oh God, well, they're not that much difference between them, is there? I mean, at least them ones on Eddie's shows and Frank's are all right, but I don't know. I mean, I fear for boxing at the moment, Rico, because I think it's going through a massive change, isn't it? People keep saying boxing's buzzing and that, but the two best heavyweights in the world from the UK, they're not going to be fighting in the UK by the looks of it if they fight. And they can't even get the fight over the line. So how's the boxing buzzing? I don't get that, me, do you?
I think the money's running out of boxing. So
yeah, I do.
You know, as the pandemic, you know, football lost a lot of money, all these other sports, and some of them are coming back with new innovations and new ways of getting. But I think the problem is, you know, it's changing with the TV companies, whether it's DAZN coming here. It's just changing. The talent isn't there. Less people are boxing, less kids. So I think the UK is massively behind, and you know, we've lost a lot of ground. Think about 4 or 5 years ago when we had 12 world champions. Now we maybe have 5 or 6, and some of them aren't even legit. I just don't think the talent's coming true. So without this new Olympic class as well, so it means that we're 1 year off of having the next crop of guys, so we're sort of 1 year behind. So there's just not much talent, and there's just not the matchmaking isn't there, and it's all become this entertainment thing. You know, who can drive views and numbers rather than who can actually box. And sadly, I think we're going to that depth that we had before Eddie came in. You know, when boxing was a bit of a wasteland, but
Yeah.
when he had all the promoters were Frank and Hennessy and Hobson and these guys, and boxing was happening, but it wasn't as big. And then Eddie had to come in to credit to him. He came in and he changed and, you know, energized it and got the guys from Hennessy and other stables and, you know, gave them platforms. So I think we're going back into that same depth.
Yeah. Okay then. Well, listen. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure, my friend.
We've had a good chat. We had a good 40 minutes or so. 45 minutes. Okay then. Well, listen. You take care. Keep in touch and keep on.
Don't have any nightmares.
I try not to, unless John Fury's coming for me.
Just turn up.
Turn up. Promise me one thing. Turn up. Take care, kid.
All right. Cheers. Bye.